The idea of Music Declares Emergency came about in a few ways. We had a huge movement of Extinction Rebellion in the UK, and they did a big blockade rebellion in London in April of 2019. And it was, first of all, it was such a big coming together of lots and lots of different people who maybe hadn't been involved in the climate movement before, but were standing up and saying, this is an emergency. And it had this amazing, great designs, these beautiful flags. It was very, for me, it felt like how a much sort of, maybe before the climate movement had looked very much like Greenpeace or Friends of the Earth and had this very kind of charity vibe to it. But Extinction Rebellion came along with this very kind of rebellious punk vibe, really. So it probably attracted quite a lot of musicians and people who worked in the music industry as it was. And a lot of us met each other through doing that and realized that with music and protest come together, it creates such an amazing feeling. And music has such a big part to play in not tackling the climate crisis directly, but creating the energy that's needed to help tackle the climate crisis, to create the sort of sense of urgency and to just shift the world culturally into a place where we are tackling the problem. So we followed the practice of another group called Culture Declares Emergency, and they got some of the big art institutions in the UK, like the Tate Britain, galleries, theatres, and they'd asked those establishments to declare a climate and ecological emergency. And we thought, okay, the music industry has to do this, otherwise it's going to be left behind for a start. And it's also a great thing to do. So lots of us in the music industry met through that way. Some people came in through Culture Declares Emergency, and we decided to do Music Declares Emergency. And it was a kind of mad couple of months. We really put it together very quickly. There was this big sense of urgency around the climate issues around that time. And this feeling of really like a feeling that anything's possible. We'd seen London being shut down for nearly 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it really sort of brought this energy to what we were doing. And we launched just after Glastonbury Festival in 2019. So, and when we launched, we already had on side a ton of amazing artists, from really, really big artists like Radiohead and Massive Attack, and then right down to grassroots artists. But also, and very importantly, we had lots of music establishments on side as well. So we had the major labels, Universal Music, Sony Music, Warner Music, loads and loads and loads of indie labels who've been really supportive to us. And yeah, other bodies in the music industry. So it really felt like a sort of industry response to the climate crisis. So obviously it's needless to say some of our campaigning and methods have changed, but really the main campaign that we're running is a Speak Up and Speak Out campaign. With our slogan, I'm wearing it on my t-shirt, it says "No music on a dead planet." We're getting behind that slogan, getting the music industry behind that slogan to just speak directly up and out, help to give artists safety in numbers, really, to speak out on climate, because it is quite a vulnerable position when you're someone who flies around the world for your job, to go out on a limb and say, look, we need to fix the climate crisis. There's obviously a bit of clash of situations going on there, and it's artists may feel intimidated, not want to speak out, they don't want to look like a hypocrite, they don't want to be a hypocrite. But what we're saying is that, look, this is incredibly important. We need to speak up about it now. Let's all do it together. You don't have to be perfect to speak out on an issue that you care about. Nobody's perfect. We're all on a different scale. We all love live music. And yeah, so anyway, we had this campaign to speak up and speak out and help artists do so. And that's obviously a lot more of that's been online. We've launched these t-shirts that obviously very sustainably produced, but they've been really popular with artists. And we've had amazing artist endorsements from all over the music industry, and artists telling their fans that they're behind the climate movement and they're supporting all of these people who are working every day to try and create a livable future, really. And some of, I guess some of our campaigns around greening the music industry, because that's also part of our work. And we work in conjunction with an amazing charity called Julie's Bicycle, who have got a lot of experience and scientific knowledge and know all about the systems of, supply chains and all of this stuff that it takes years of research to sort of work out how it's possible to change them. Some of that, like a lot of that work is still going on. Record labels, all sorts of different manufacturing companies are realizing that they need sustainability to be built into their practices. So that's still going on behind the scenes. We're not campaigning on that as much at the moment because we know the music industry is in a very, very difficult time. So it's being sensitive around that. The pandemic has really wreaked havoc, especially with venues and touring artists. And agents and everyone who relies on the touring industry, like the people behind the scenes, etc. So we're not pushing on that right now. It's not the right time for that. It's a very difficult time. It's important to be sensitive. But the main thing, and this is what our declaration is about, we're called Music Declares Emergency because we have a declaration that all of these people who support us have signed and got behind. And our declaration really is calling on governments to act urgently on climate and aim for net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, which is sort of way ahead of most of the targets that nations are sort of making noises about. So that's really our key thing, is to get that message out there, get the message out to governments, really, through music, through their voters, through their fans. Music fans are voters. They will have their say. Mm-hmm. So Music Declares Emergency is becoming a global movement. You can sign up to support our declaration wherever you're from. The website is the same for everybody. It's www.musicdeclares.net. And if you like our declaration and think you can support it, you can sign up. Even as a music fan, you can do that. If you want to receive our mail outs, etc., and find out what we're up to and what's happening in the industry, but especially for music industry and artists, etc. If you're involved in the industry, then please sign up if you think it might be something you're interested in. But there's different Music Declares Emergency groups popping up all around the world, and everyone's independent, but we're all under the same umbrella with the same declaration, the same goals, the same aim to really just make a noise about telling governments to act urgently on climate. So we've got groups in Chile, Germany, Canada, France, Switzerland. It's really popping up everywhere. So if you think it's like something you might want to be involved with and you're a Brazilian artist, musician, massive music fan, industry, it really is helpful if there's music industry people involved. Our working group is mainly music industry, entirely music industry personnel. But if you think you'd like to be involved, then you can set up your own group. You can become Music Declares Emergency Brazil. So that's definitely something you can get in touch with us and say that you want to do that. And one of the reasons it's important is because music's completely different everywhere. You don't want to say the same thing to music fans in France as you do in Germany, for example, and they're right next to each other. So everyone knows their home audience the best. So it's really nice to have different groups popping up all around the world who can speak directly to people in their country with the language it's going to be useful for that population.